What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who Classic Review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the first Doctor William Hartnell story, The Reign of Terror. This is a story, much like a lot of other ones that I've reviewed lately, that I don't really know much about, that I didn't know much about going into it. It's about the French Revolution. It is a pure historical story, and that's pretty much all I knew about it. So going into this one fairly blind. There is a couple of episodes of animation, parts 4 and 5, both animated because they are lost. But yeah, and it's one of the early animations. I don't think it's the first animation, but it's definitely one of the earliest animations that they did. But anyway, let's get started with the back of the DVD. This is The Reign of Terror by Dennis Spooner. The TARDIS arrives near Paris during the French Revolution, a time of great upheaval, bloodshed and terror. Soon, with the Doctor trapped inside a burning farmhouse, Ian imprisoned and Susan and Barbara on their way to the guillotine, it's clear this will be one of their most dangerous and exciting adventures yet. So that's the back of the DVD, not a massive amount to talk about. Yeah, just not really much to say. We'll get onto some points later, but let's start off with the cast. William Hartnell as the first Doctor. I think William Hartnell in this one is actually very good. He's a little bit hit and miss sometimes, especially later on when, he's getting older. He's not getting great with his lines, forgetting his lines quite a lot. This is still quite early on in the show. Is this from season 1 or season 2, this story? I'm just seeing if it says anything here. I'm not actually 100% sure if this is season 1 or season 2. I think it's still season 1. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But it's early on in Doctor Who and in William Hartnell's, position in the role. And yeah, he's good here. He has he dresses up as someone with quite a bit of authority and is pretending to be someone he's not, to try and get to Ian and Barbara and Susan when after they've been, captured, or taken when the Doctor's found in that burning house or get stuck in that burning house, and we'll get onto all that later. But yeah, he does a lot of stuff, not really with our main cast. Our main cast are kind of split into 3 groups for most of it. Kind of got the Doctor on his own, you've got Ian on his own, and then you've got Barbara and Susan together. But yeah, William Hartnell in this one is actually very good. William Russell as Ian Chesterton. William Russell is also really good in this one. He's always one of the standouts in this lineup for me, in these early stories. He's the youthful one. He's kind of the action man of these early episodes, and yep, that kind of comes into hands here as well. He gets captured, but then he tries to escape and does escape and gets help from some other people, and yeah, he is the one with the action in this story, and all in all does a good job. Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright is perfectly fine in this story. I'd say that Barbara and Susan probably the most on the side in this story, to be honest. There's kind of the thing with Susan getting sick. Barbara doesn't do a massive amount, but for what she's given, Jacqueline Hill does well. And then of course Carol Ann Ford as Susan Foreman. Once again, she's fine. There's not really any screaming from Susan in this one, or very little anyway, which is always nice to see. Because yeah, for the majority of the story, she's sick with something and she doesn't really do a whole lot, but all in all, she's fine. Right, so let's get on to some points about the Reign of Terror. The Doctor thinks he's returning Ian and Barbara home, but turns out they're in France. So, yeah, the whole thing from the minute Ian and Barbara stepped into the TARDIS is that they've just been wanting to get home, and the Doctor seemingly cannot pilot the TARDIS and is really struggling to get them home. Well, this time he's pretty certain that he has got them back to London 1965. But it turns out that's not the case. He's actually landed in France, and it's the French Revolution, which is funny for the Doctor because the French Revolution is apparently his favorite historical time in Earth history. So, a little bit of a coincidence. Did he actually mean to? Was it an accident that he landed here, or did he actually, want to land here? I think we know the answer to that one. But yeah, he thinks, or at least he says to them that, oh yeah, I'm getting you back home, but of course, they're not actually home. They're in the middle of the French Revolution. Yep, like I said before, they're in France. It's not even, modern day, present day, 1960s. It is way back in the French Revolution. I'll be honest, I don't know a massive amount about the French Revolution. History is not my strong point, and especially not that end of history, that part of history. But yeah, and all in all, historicals aren't my favorite stories in Doctor Who. There's a lot of historicals in the 60s, especially the first Doctor's era, and they're not my favorite. The Aztecs is good, and the Romans I really enjoy, but other than those two, The other ones that I've seen have not been my favorite, and to be honest, a lot of them are actually, lost mostly and not released in any real form other than audio. So I haven't seen a lot of them anyway. But yeah. The Doctor is stuck inside the burning building. So the cliffhanger to, I believe it's the cliffhanger to part 1, is that they're in this building. The building starts burning down. Ian, Barbara, and Susan manage to get out, but the Doctor is, they find somebody in the building before it gets burnt down. They kind of capture the Doctor, kind of knock him out, from what I remember. And then, he's then stuck in a room. Everybody else gets out, but the Doctor's still trapped in this building as the credits roll. So it's quite an exciting end to the first part. The Doctor hits a guy over the head with a pickaxe. So this is a pretty brutal scene. Now, I don't think he kills the guy, but basically the Doctor's, he managed to get out of the burning building, and then he's walking to try and find Ian, Barbara, and Susan. He comes across this guy who's basically making people work for him for very little, if maybe no money, I think, like kind of digging for treasures. And the Doctor gets caught up in that. He ends up starting digging himself, and then manages to make an escape plan, and hits the guy over the head with a pickaxe pretty brutally, the way he swings at it. And I mean, I think he just supposedly knocks him out, but I mean, he literally whacks him over the head with his pickaxe. So all in all, it seems pretty brutal for the Doctor. Barbara and Susan are saved from the guillotine. So Barbara and Susan get taken away to this prison. I think Ian is also taken to this prison at this point, but they're in separate cells. And Barbara and Susan end up getting taken over. Well, they start getting taken over to the guillotine to be executed. But then some men come and save them. I can't remember the names of all the men. I will be honest, it was very difficult to differentiate the good guys from the bad guys in this story, and I will get onto that in a moment. But they get saved by someone, and of course don't get executed. Everyone in France has an English accent. This was really difficult for me. I was really struggling to figure out who were the good guys and who were the bad guys, the French, the English. It was quite hard to figure out. I mean, costumes wise, yes, there were different costumes, so in that regard, you could kind of figure out who was on which side, but everybody had an English accent. There wasn't a French accent in sight, which I thought was very strange. I mean, like I said, I don't know much about history or the French Revolution, but the French people still had French accents back then, right? It wasn't just all English and two different sides of an... You know what I'm talking about? It was very difficult to differentiate who was who. Everybody just talked with a very British accent, and it did put me off a little bit. Very realistic 3D animation that's quite creepy with zero facial emotions. So we get to episode 4. The first 3 episodes are, proper film, they're properly recorded, we have the footage. But then episodes 4 and 5 are animated. Back to episode 6 is normal again. But the animation in this one, like I said, it's one of the early animations. Like I said, it might not be the first animation, but it's definitely one of the early ones, and it's pretty poor. I will say it's probably my least favorite animation that I've watched so far, because they kind of went with this 3D animation, but it's really weird. I don't know, it just doesn't work. The way they kind of cut the shots as well. I mean, classic Doctor Who, there's not as many cuts as there are in modern Doctor Who and just modern TV in general with the classic Doctor Who. And with the more modern animations, they try and keep that aesthetic of, longer shots, not so many cuts with the newer animation. With this animation, they tried doing more of a modern take on how it would have looked, but when you contrast that with the surviving episodes that you can watch, it just doesn't flow together nicely at all. And then as well as that, just the way it's 3D and not just like the 2D like it would be in the future, it just doesn't work. There's no emotions on the characters at all. They're talking and there's no emotions. It's quite creepy, and it's honestly quite bad. Most of the animations I can actually watch perfectly fine intertwined with the surviving episodes, and it works fine for me. This one, just honestly did not enjoy those parts. Susan is sick. There's a point in the story where Susan gets sick. I don't exactly know what with. I don't really know what for either. Susan was very much a side character in this one, as she is for a lot of her time, to be honest. She just gets sick, and that's about that, really. Eventually she gets better. Not really much more to say. Ian is captured, but then saved. So, yep, Ian gets captured because he manages to leave the prison, but then gets captured by someone else, and then gets saved again. And once again, this was another part that was very confusing because it was like, is he with the good guys now? Is he with the bad guys? What's going on? I think this part was also mostly animated, so that made it quite confusing. The cuts in this scene were very bad, actually. They were really quick cuts constantly, and every time somebody was talking, it would switch to them, and it just, yeah, really didn't fit the flow. The Doctor has found out that he's pretending to be someone else. So yeah, for most of the story, the Doctor, he like buys some clothes and stuff off someone and then is pretending to be that person. It goes on for quite a while. You know, he's at the prison and manages to kind of give a bit of authority there, but eventually he's found out that he is not actually that person because they find the real person that he was trying to be. And yeah, he gets found out basically. Finally, the Doctor frees Susan from the prison because yeah, Susan ends up back in the prison. He frees her. She eventually gets better from her sickness. And yeah, all in all, I'll be honest, at the end of this one, I was kind of zoning out a little bit. Didn't really know what was going on. Didn't make a whole lot of notes because, frankly, I just didn't find it that interesting. So yeah, that's my review of The Reign of Terror. A rating out of 10? I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 10. I think it's pretty boring. 6 parts, like a lot of this era of Doctor Who. It goes on for too long. Make it a 4-parter. The animation does unfortunately bring it down quite a bit as well. Usually I try not to factor the animation in too much, but this animation is just so poor that it really did have an effect on me. Not a good effect. And all in all, it's just a pretty boring story, you know. It's one of those historicals that it's not really a lot going on. There's just a lot of talking, a lot of going from place to place, people getting captured, a staple of classic Doctor Who. And yeah, just honestly not that interesting. So a 5 out of 10, I think, is honestly a little bit generous. I was considering maybe even a 4, but you know, I don't think it's absolutely terrible. It's just a bit boring. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.